no denying that technology is everywhere around us. In society, in business, and in science, it is everywhere. But does it have a place in the modern day classroom? Using online articles and my own opinion, I will be weighing the pros and the cons of technology in the classroom and then be making an educated statement as to where I believe technology in the classroom, how it's used correctly, how it's used incorrectly, and if it has a place in the modern day classroom. First off, I'm going to talk about the pros because I believe that there's more pros than cons, a little bit of a spoiler. So yeah, let's talk about the pros. The first pro I'm going to talk about is that the prevalence of online learning is becoming more and more apparent every single day. Just an example off of the top of my head is actually a very recent example. With the COVID-19 virus spreading around, many universities are opting for a online only distribution of the course content for many classes. And this is important because it forces teachers to learn how to use technology in a way that maybe they haven't before. It's using technology is more than just using a smartboard in the classroom. It's about creating content and a delivery method for students to learn. The second pro is from an environmental standpoint. It is estimated that by 2026, almost every single textbook will be gone in favor for online materials. This is obviously very good for the environment, as you know, there's less waste. And it also makes it so that the content is up to date, as many textbooks are very old and have outdated material. So that's another pro to having technology in the classroom. Another benefit to technology in the classroom is that Gen Zs and any future generations of students already have the basis. Many of them already have the basis for technology in their own life. So some of them may be more proficient and experienced with an iPad with a certain app than pencil and paper. Or maybe they learn from videos more than from a simple lecture. Incorporating technology in the classroom makes it so that these new students coming in with a background in technology make it so that they can learn in a way that works for them. As traditional teaching methods, such as just using chalk on a chalkboard or just even marker on a whiteboard, may not apply to them than a more technologically advanced approach, such as a video like I made for my last project, or another form of instruction like Bill Nye the Science Guy. There are so many ways that current modern day students learn that are different than previous students. Another pro is that screencasting is becoming more and more implemented into classrooms to this day. Going back to my example of smartboards, it was only around a decade and a half ago when I remember the first smartboard came in, and it was like primitive, crazy new technology at the time. And now that I'm becoming a teacher potentially, to see a smartboard in every single classroom is awesome, because I remember when I was young, we got one smartboard. It was in our library, and it was like a privilege to use this thing. So screencasting, from either an iPad or onto the smartboard is becoming prevalent in every single classroom. So it's important that educators know how to use the smartboard to its fullest potential, to either cast their own screen or to cast a student's screen from their own device, or whatever it may be. So that's another pro for technology. Another pro to technology in the classroom is the introduction of gamification. Basically taking educational concepts and other aspects of education into a gaming format. Not necessarily a video game format, but something just like Kahoot, where there is an incorporation of technology that students love. They love the competitive aspect of it. It's a great way for summative learning. And then also going back to my previous point is that many students have more contact with video games and social media. So the incorporation of gamification is also extremely important, and what I believe to be a pro inside of today's classroom. The final pro that I'm going to talk about is that having more technology in the classroom makes so there's an emphasis on the importance of technology in today's society. What I mean by that is that in today's classrooms, there's a much stronger emphasis on coding at a younger age. When I was going through school, there was no such thing as coding before high school. I had no idea what coding was, and I love coding now, so I really wish I would have known that earlier. And the modern day businesses around us all require at least some form of coding, it seems. So introducing technology into the classroom early makes it so that the students realize technology is important to succeed in today's business or whatever profession they choose, you need to have that basic understanding of how coding works and how technology works in order to succeed in today's business. So those are the pros of incorporating technology into the classroom. Now I'm going to get into the cons. The first con of implementing technology into the classroom is obviously the most obvious one, and that is that it is expensive and it goes out of date so fast. And as educators, it's important for us to realize which forms of technology we should invest into and that won't become obsolete in 1 or 2 years. An example, once again, is a smartboard. I swear they haven't changed since I was in grade 4. They still offer everything. If anything, they've advanced more. So that was an example of technology that was worth investing into. One that's not worth investing into is from my own personal experience. I built a computer 2 summers ago with, well, at the time, the newest GPU and CPU, and it's already out of date. And I could have built my current PC that I use for much cheaper than I did 2 years ago and have much better specs. So the biggest con is that it's expensive and people aren't informed on which technology they should invest their time and learning into and which ones are just going to be a fad and not worth going into. The next con is different social dynamics within a classroom. Every single classroom has a diverse set of students, whether that be by their skin color, by their income, or from anything else. Every student is different. So as I mentioned earlier, is that many students may be proficient inside using an iPad or a tablet of some kind, but then there are also the students who may live in poverty and may not have access to those forms of technology. So as an educator, it's important that your approach of technology doesn't exclude the students who don't have access to it at home. It's unfair to them, so you need to figure out a way to allow both students to succeed in the classroom. So you can't 100% focus on just technology, but you also need to think about the students that don't have access to it as well. So that's another con, is that all students have different levels of technological understanding. The next con, and also a very big one, is how do we monitor what a student is doing on their device? What I mean by this is if we have an assignment where it requires the use of technology like an in-class iPad or an in-class laptop, how do we know that they're on topic, but they aren't on Facebook, or they aren't on Instagram, or they aren't on TikTok? It's really hard for us as teachers to monitor 30 students in a classroom, what they're all doing. The easiest workaround to this is to have the IPS of the school internet to just simply block those portals and websites that allow students to have access to websites like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. The problem is, though, is that if a student brings in their own device like an iPhone, especially prevalent in later grades, especially high school, is that they will have data and they can work around the school's measures to prevent them from going on that social media or video games or whatever. So a big con is just how do we monitor and make sure that students are actually on topic, because it's so easily distractible for both students and adults alike to just focus on one thing and then get distracted by Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. So that's probably one of the biggest cons, is just how do you monitor a student's learning and if they're on topic. The final con that I'm going to talk about is how certain technologies can actually ruin how a student learns a specific concept. An example of this is in math class, you're not allowed to use certain types of calculators or apps to learn something like long division or cross multiplication. Everyone knows how to enter something like 137 times 23 on a calculator, but not understanding how or what that means via doing it handwrittenly is bad for students because they don't know what this means. And an example of this, again, in high school, was that we were only allowed to use specific types of calculators to figure out certain problems, like with advanced functions and such. Nowadays, with the rising of apps making everything easier, students may learn their opportunity to learn a new concept just because an app does it for them themselves. Like if they're struggling with a math problem, they might just go to this app and punch in all the numbers and get the correct answer without knowing how they got that correct answer or what the steps in the process was to get that correct answer. So the final con is that technology can actually hamper a student's learning if they just decide to take the easy route. At the end of the day, I believe that it is extremely important to incorporate technology within the classroom. I personally believe that the biggest problem is actually on the educator themselves, not being familiar or proficient with a certain technology. Having teachers that aren't proficient with a certain technology or not knowing when to use a specific technology is one of the biggest problems. An example off the top of my head is virtual reality is becoming a more and more prevalent thing in teaching. But virtual reality should be reserved for very specific situations. An example could be like a high school student learning about biology or a college or university student learning about flight simulation. Virtual reality would aid them so much. But virtual reality isn't going to help a grade 4 student learn about cross division or cross multiplication and long division. It's not going to aid them in any way, and that's such an expensive piece of technology that as an educator you have to know when and when not to use it. It's 100% up to the educator to when to use a specific technology and when it's appropriate and not appropriate in the classroom. An educator's proficiency is also an extremely important thing, because if you're using something like a smartboard as just a simple replacement for a chalkboard or a whiteboard, i.e. you just have a white screen and you're just writing on it and using it as a chalkboard, you're missing out and doing a disservice to your students. Another reason why being proficient with a smartboard is so important is that it's many different technologies in one. When I was a kid, and I'm sure when you were a kid, I swear the overhead projector was the way of life for many, many, many years. And I remember if we had to have a video being played, like Bill Nye the Science Guy or any other educational resource, they would pull in that trolley with that big TV and everyone would get super excited. Being proficient with a smartboard allows for none of that to be necessary, as everything is within one unit, essentially. So I believe that an educator's proficiency of technology and their own personal knowledge is just as important as it is to implement technology in the classroom. Simple things like showing a YouTube video or an educational video like I made in my previous project is just the surface level things you can do with a smartboard. So if you don't know how to use a smartboard other than just a replacement for your whiteboard, you're doing your students a disservice, as well as yourself as a disservice, not giving them the materials they need to succeed. Overall, after weighing the pros and the cons of technology in the classroom, I believe that technology should be incorporated in the classroom as long as it's incorporated smartly. I don't want grade 4 teachers to start getting virtual reality in the classroom just because it's the new thing and you think it'll make them learn their fractions better. I don't want high school teachers using Kahoot just for the sake of using Kahoot. I want teachers to be able to actually learn their own technology and know when it is appropriate to use it. Having educators that understand how to use technology will benefit children and students just so much more than if you were just simply told, or if you were just simply given like a 50-minute workshop on how to use a smartboard. Technology in the classroom is better for the environment. It aids students as it's much more approachable for them, and it also really emphasizes the importance of technology in the world around us, as coding has become so much more important. The cons are definitely still there, but I believe that if the educator makes the effort and puts it into becoming proficient with some technology, then technology in the classroom is here to stay and it will continue to advance, and I think it's really important.